Well, even though this spring we thought it would never quit raining, the faucet basically got turned off, and in most parts of Oklahoma we haven't had a lot of precipitation. That means we're watering our lawns, our trees, and our shrubs. And there's a proper way to do this, and it will not only benefit the health of your turf, your trees, and your shrubs, but it will also help you to save water if you water properly. I'm going to give you a few tips on how to do that. And to start with, the first thing that you want to do with your turf is figure out when you need to water. It's not something that's on a calendar basis. You don't water every 5 days. What you need to do is look for signs in your turf that it needs to be watered, and it'll show you if you just look closely. Now right here we've got some well-watered turf, and you can see that it's nice and green. And if I pick a blade of grass here, you'll notice that the blade is flat. Here you can see, even though this is very fine bladed grass, you can see how it lays flat there and on the edge. Now, as turf starts to wilt, it'll show you signs of wilting. It's not like larger plants that kind of droop over, but what turf does as it wilts, it gets a bluish cast to it, and you'll also see that the blades actually fold up in the middle. They fold in half. And right here we've got one that's been picked a while, and you can see how it's folding up. Now the blade of grass that I just picked, because I've cut off the water source, you can see that here, but see how it's starting to roll up because I have cut off the water source to that blade, and that was a nice flat one a little bit earlier. Now what turf does as it wilts is it basically just folds in half. So as you're looking at your lawn, you'll kind of notice, if you look closely, that the leaf blades are folding in half, and it'll have kind of a bluish cast to it. It kind of reminds me of when a piece of grass or a plant or something has got a lot of dust or something on it, a coat of that, you'll kind of see that kind of dusty look to it. So that's kind of your indicators that it needs watered. Another thing that you'll notice is that as you walk through your turf, the footprints will stay there, whereas if it's well watered, the grass springs back up. Well, if it needs watered, those footprints will stay in there longer. Now, once you decided, boy, my grass needs watered, you need to know how much water to put on it. And in general, about an inch of water. What you're wanting to do is soak that soil about 6 inches deep, because turf roots don't go much beyond that. Well, how do you know how much water to put on? Now, if you've got clay soil, about an inch. If you have sandy soil, about a ½ an inch, and probably in between for a sandy loam soil. So what you can do is put your sprinkler out and then take 3 to 5 cans, straight-sided cans, and set them out at intervals going away from the sprinkler, with the last can about at the edge of your sprinkler pattern. The next thing that you want to do then after that is go ahead and turn on the sprinkler and let it run for a set amount of time, say 30 minutes. Come back, measure the amount of water in the cans, and it's going to be an average. What you're going to notice is you're going to have more water in the can closer to the sprinkler than you do have at the end. And that tells you two things. One, you're going to need to overlap your sprinkler pattern just a bit, because at the edge of the pattern, you're not going to be getting quite as much water. But it also tells you you've got a lot more water right here closer to the sprinkler. What you do is you take an average of those cans, and that'll tell you how much water you need. So if I let this sprinkler run for 30 minutes, came back and measured the water in the cans, and on the average I had ½ an inch of water in there, I would know that to let my sprinkler run for an hour should give me about an inch. There's something else that you can do, because again, it depends on the type of your soil that you have as to how fast the water goes down and how deep it goes. You can fine-tune this by taking a screwdriver or a long rod and sticking that into the ground. And it will basically go down as deep as the water has sunk into the ground. And you can see here we've got well-watered turf, and our screwdriver goes in all the way. Now we're going to go take a look at some turf that's been watered for different amounts of times, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Now out here we've got an area where we don't even water the turf, and I wanted to show you what I was talking about with the screwdriver or the rod. As we start to try to poke this into the ground, you'll notice that it just does not even go into the ground at all. So we haven't watered, so the screwdriver can't sink down into the ground. Now right here, I've got an area where I watered the turf for 30 minutes. And as we do our screwdriver into the ground, it'll sink in a little bit more. And we can see how far the water has soaked in, about 2 inches. Now, if we're wanting to water our turf till we've got it about 6 inches deep, then we'll need to water it for a little bit longer and come back and check. Because basically, you can poke this into the ground as far down as the water has sunk in. And where it stops, that's the water line. That's how deep the water has gone. So this can kind of help you fine-tune just how long you need to water to get it right. Now, the other thing that you'll want to keep in mind is that if your lawn is on any type of slope, you may have to divide your watering into a couple of sets. Let it run, say, until it starts to run off, and then turn your sprinkler off for 30 minutes to an hour, and then turn it back on and let it go in. Because once the water is running off and going down the street, it's not doing your lawn any good, and it's not doing you any good because you're having to pay for that extra water, and it's wasteful. So think about trying to fine-tune your watering schedule, and once you've got these things down, you don't have to do them every time. Once you've got it figured out how long it takes, then you can water more efficiently and have a healthier turf. Well, even though our turf areas only need to be watered about 6 inches deep, the areas where we've got annuals, perennials, shrubs, and trees planted need to be watered deeper. And since this is a little bit deeper that they need watered, our watering practices are going to vary a little bit. Now with our annuals, our perennials, and our shrubs, they need to be wet to a depth of about 12 inches. And with your annuals, since their root systems aren't quite as extensive as the perennials and the shrubs, you'll probably want to water them more, and especially like in your vegetable garden, you'll probably be watering to a depth of about 12 inches about 3 times a week, depending on the weather. Now with our trees, if we have a younger tree, a depth of about 18 inches is good, and with an older established tree, a depth of about 24 inches is good. Now something to think about, if you have trees planted in your lawn area, what you're watering your lawn is not going to be enough water for your trees. You'll want to add some additional water. The idea though is you don't want to add all that additional water to your lawn. So instead of using the sprinkler, just take the sprinkler off the hose and then set the hose around the drip line of the tree. And the drip line is basically where the leaves drip here, and water in that area with a slow trickle from the hose. That way it has time to sink in deeply and you can get that tree watered better than you can get the lawn watered. Now again, our older established trees, because they have more extensive root systems, may not be so prone to drought stress as say our turf or our annuals or shrubs. But in times of extended drought, it is a good idea to water them deeply. Now, the thing that you need to remember is if you have newly planted trees and shrubs, you've got them in containers and you just planted them this year, you're going to have to watch the water very closely, and the rules are totally different for those. You'll actually need to water these plants every day or every other day, and you'll want to check them very closely for that. The other thing to think about is if I've planted a 1-gallon shrub or tree in the ground, that soil that was in that pot is a lot more well drained than the soil around it, and it's going to have a tendency to dry out a lot faster. And when I water this tree, I'm going to need to put the water in this area, because basically I'm watering this area right here. So if I'm watering out here, it's not going to get to my shrubs. So you're going to have to put that water up close to it. Now, while we need to check the water every day, we probably don't want to drown them either, because with the surrounding soil being a lot thicker, it can also act like a little bathtub or a sink and hold the water. So if we overwater these, you can actually drown them out. So it's a little bit tricky there. However, there's some good guides to go by. For a 1-gallon pot container that you've planted in the ground, basically about 1.5 quarts of water every day or every couple of days is a good rule of thumb. If you've gone with a 3-gallon container, then 1 gallon of water every day or every 2 days is a good rule of thumb. And with a 5-gallon container, 1.5 gallons. And to help you measure that, you can basically just get a gallon, poke a couple holes in here, and just fill this up and let it drain out. And remember to set it up close enough so that it's hitting that area. Now again, depending on your soil type, You may have to vary this a little bit, but it's a good way to start. So these are just some tips on how to get your stuff watered and get it watered well so that you can have success with your turf, your trees, your shrubs, and your annuals. Well, once we've figured out how to properly water our turf, another key to keeping it healthy is proper mowing. You only want to remove about 1/3 of the leaf blade at a time. Now, when you mow, it's really important to have a sharp mower blade, and this can seem like a pain, but it really goes a long way in helping keep your turf healthy. And what I'm talking about is right down here. As we look in our turf, you can see what it looks like when you don't have a sharp mower blade. Now right here, we have the effects of a mower blade that wasn't sharp enough, and you can see on the grass on the tips how it's kind of shredded at the top. Now what that does is it opens the grass up to invasion by diseases and infections, and it also makes it look kind of brown on the tips. There's a lot more wounded area on the top of this grass than there would be if it had been cut clean. So this is what can happen if your mower blade isn't sharp enough. Well, to sharpen a lawnmower blade, and you usually want to check it and see about sharpening it about once a month during the heavy mowing season, but you just remove the blade from the lawnmower and then you'll sharpen the cutting edge with a file. Now you can just lay this on a flat surface off the edge and sharpen it. Now you don't want to sharpen it razor sharp like you would be sharpening your kitchen knives, because you want a little bit of surface here so that it resists nicks, but you do want to sharpen the nicks out, because that's what cuts and tears the grass. Now usually you would use a file, however there is another item. It's kind of a handy dandy extra special file. This is called a diamond diafold. It's a diamond file, and it's a diafold because it's got two sides to it. It's got a coarse side and a fine side, and then it also folds up. So it's very light and easy to take care of. Now, if you need a lubricant for this file, all you use is water. You don't need to use oil to sharpen with it. You just use water, and then rinse this and make sure it's really dry before you put it away. But this does a very good job of sharpening. It's also very light, easy to take with you if you need to sharpen your tools somewhere. This is not only good for lawnmower blades, it also comes in grits that are very good to sharpen your tools like your hose, your head shears. It comes in smaller sizes that you can use to actually sharpen your saw blades and things like that. So this is a very handy item, and it actually costs, it's around $39, so it's more expensive than a file. It will last a long time, and it is easy to use. So you could use this to sharpen your mower blades with. Now, one other item, besides being sharp, you need to check and see if your mower blade is balanced. Because if it's out of balance, it's hard on the grass, and it's also hard on your lawnmower. And the way to check and see if it's balanced, you can do this at home. Just put a nail in the wall, and then hang the mower blade, after you've sharpened it, by the center. Make sure it's not touching the wall on either side, and if it lays horizontal, then it is balanced. Now here you can see it's not quite horizontal, so we're going to need to take some more off of this side to balance it out. So you want to sharpen the edge, make sure it's balanced, and then put it back on your mower, and then check it about once a month. Make sure that you don't have any big nicks in it. That will help keep your grass much more healthy, and it'll make it easier to mow the lawn.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.